had to completely switch their defense around when he wasn't on the field. And this is somebody that, even though he has this massive impact on this defense, really doesn't get a lot of attention or get a lot of praises when you're talking about the top corners in football. And I'm not trying to say you should put him on par with Sauce Gardner, Jalen Ramsey, or Pat Surtain or anything, but you'd be hard-pressed to find, I'd say, 12, 13, maybe 14 guys better than him in the league right now. Alrighty, welcome everybody back to another video here on the channel. If you don't know who I am by now, my name is David. I also go by Miller Football, and I am currently on a mission of sorts to talk about all 32 NFL teams leading into the upcoming season. We're talking about what they did last season, what they did during the offseason, and what our expectations are for this upcoming season. But considering I am only a fan of one team, unlike somebody you can see below me, I have enlisted the help of fans of all 32 teams. And we do have an actual fan of the team we're going to be talking about today, and that's the LA Chargers. So to my right, we have the man, the myth, the legend, Tyler Weiss. And then below me, we have Patrick, also known as No Huddle NFL, who, as I already mentioned, has no loyalties. So whenever I just need somebody to fill in, he's going to show up because he has no social life, just like myself, and has no problems coming on. But before we jump into this, considering it has taken us 20 minutes to get started for technical reasons, how are you guys doing today?
I'm good. I intentionally set up my background to show exactly what you just said with the signed Darius Leonard here, the Raiders hat that I kind of just threw there. I'm not going to lie. Tennessee Titans, Derrick Henry right there. Jack Lambert that you could barely see. And a Rams jersey because my Manti Te'o jersey doesn't fit me, but it's an LA football team and Brandon Staley. So I tried, okay? An effort was made.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good right now. Like both of you, I don't really have much of a social life. I mean, aside from practicing driving today, because I still don't have my license at 18. I know, embarrassing.
I'm
Yeah,
20
I
and I
mean,
don't have mine, so I feel you.
yeah, I'm just kind of like not really doing anything today. So
Valid. Yeah, Patrick, you might be the only person I know to own a Manti Te'o jersey. I'm going to be honest. Like that,
I'm proud, bro.
as you should be. And
How
it's
many
not
other
even,
people do you know that have a Paul Posluszny?
I mean, Paul Posluszny is a lot better than Manti Te'o. Like, that's a lot cooler. Paul Posluszny, I'm kind of jealous of. I'm not going to lie. Manti Te'o is like, he was a bear at one point. I guess I can't talk too much shit on him, but he was a bear
Chargers
for like
legend.
a week. Yeah, Bears and Chargers legend. Absolutely. But talking about the Chargers, the big event that happened, obviously, was the big playoff collapse against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So just to get it out of the way, this is more geared towards Tyler, but I'm sure you'll have thoughts on it too, Patrick. How do you feel like however many months removed from that fateful night?
honestly, I mean, as soon as they went up 27-0, I mean, I remember just watching it with my family. My dad, he's like, "Well, I think you're going to the wild card round," and in my mind, well, you're going to the divisional round, and I'm like, well, in my mind, I'm like, oh, we're done now. Like, I've seen this too many times. I've seen this story, and so I was kind of prepared for it in a way, but at the same time, it's just like still that field goal, the last second field goal, just kind of like replays in my head every time I think about it or think about the Chargers in general. Like in terms of losses, I do think that was probably top three in my lifetime for the Chargers and worst in terms of worst losses. So still not quite over it, but it's only football, right?
So it's funny that you mentioned that I don't have a social life. I was at a party when I watched that game.
The only one you've ever been to.
This is cyberbullying. So I was at a party and I was just watching the game the entire time. Other people were like stopping by, stared at the game for a little bit. And then eventually it got to, what was it, 28-0? Am I correct in saying that? 28?
27-0.
27-0. Okay. And everyone was saying, "Why are you still watching?" And I just looked at them and said, "Podcast," and then looked away. Uh, so yeah, I kept watching. I'm glad that I kept watching because from the Jaguars' perspective, that was a really fun game to watch. Chargers fans, like yourself, I can only imagine how infuriated you would have been with that entire thing. But the good thing that came out of that game is Joe Lombardi's gone. And that game is one of the main reasons why. So with every playoff loss, a organization changes. And the Chargers had their fair share of changes during this offseason. We're going to talk about that, but first, let's talk about the rest of the season, right?
This is
Yeah.
my show. I don't know why you think you get to do transitions that are really well done, I will say. I don't know who you think you are, but I need you to cut the shit right now.
Okay.
But yeah, like Patrick so beautifully said in transition to last season, the Chargers went 10-7, which was good enough for second in the AFC West. Obviously made it to the wild card round, got beat by the Jaguars, as unfortunate as that is. They were 5-3 at home, 5-4 on the road, and then 4-1 in their last 5 games. And something that I like to look at specifically with that Jaguars game, and something that I think holds the Chargers back pretty consistently, um, is their lack of a. How do I want to put this? Because I got to put it delicately, because I know no matter how I word it, people are going to hate me. A lack of a established rushing game, I guess is the best
Like
way to put it.
running in
Like,
between the tackles.
yeah, like the type of running you want when you're up big, right? Like in that game, you want to run the ball between the tackles, drain the clock, and control the football. And the Chargers aren't a team that really have that. They're mainly get it to the outside and benefit off explosive plays, which is fine and dandy in normal circumstances, but when you're up big, that doesn't really work. And a big reason for that is because their running back is Austin Eckler. And for anyone following the Chargers this offseason, Austin Eckler has been pretty vocal in not being happy with what he's been paid. So my next question for you guys is just how do we feel about everything going on with Austin Eckler specifically? Like, obviously, this is a symptom of a bigger issue with running backs, but with Austin Eckler specifically, because I feel like there's a bit more arrogance coming from his end. How do we feel about it?
I don't know. I just feel like I'm looking at this from a perspective of someone who looks at solely the box scores. Like you look at Austin Eckler these last 2 years, led the league in touchdowns. Okay, so if you're gonna go into a meeting alone and contract negotiations and say, "Hey, I want to get more paid more because I led the league in touchdowns," and scoring touchdowns is what gets you wins, then I wouldn't say that's like the worst argument in the world. At the same time, you just can't at a non-premium position, you just can't be I don't really know how to say this, but you can't just be solely a goal line or receiving back and expect to be paid top dollar. Like he's fine, I guess, as a but as like a pure rusher, it's just that element has never been there in his game. So I don't necessarily think for that reason that he should be paid more.
Listen, I think it's very simple. I'm not going to go too in depth of with the entire running back situation from an NFL perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Just from the Chargers perspective, though, he did eventually agree to this incentive-based deal, and I think that's how a lot of these running backs should be getting paid, because the main concern that all these owners have, right, is what if we pay this guy and he gets hurt, right? And that's a major concern with all these players. Eckler has a little bit of an injury history, of course. Not as much recently, but he still has a history of being banged up. I I get it from his perspective, but at the same time, I don't, right? This is a guy that was asked in such an important game that we talked about earlier to kind of win it for them, put the nail in the coffin, and he couldn't really do that. And because of that, they ended up losing. Yet now he's the one asking for an extension. It's really ironic, if you ask me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not one to shy away from the fact that I'm not necessarily the biggest Eckler fan. Like, I get it. Tyler brought it up. He led the league in touchdowns last year, and sure, he's good for some explosive plays and, picking up chunk yardage and things like that. And he's a weapon in the receiving game. But when it comes to performing the duties of a running back, which is, just consistently getting you yards, whether it's mostly between the tackles is where my issues lie. In situations like that, like me and Patrick brought up, not being able to run the clock against the Jaguars because of him and his just lack of ability as a pure runner really turns me off. And I know that's kind of ironic given teams are looking for more receiving running backs, but you got to have a balance, right? Like Christian McCaffrey, Travis Etienne, these guys that are really good pass catchers out of the backfield can still make plays between the tackles if needed. Eckler can't. And I feel like that holds him back a lot. So obviously he's an important part of the Chargers offense, and I'm excited to see what Kellen Moore is going to do with him, which we'll get into. And I know Patrick's really excited to talk about what his offense is going to look like. But it's tough for me to, I don't want to say sympathize with Eckler, but kind of see his side in all this. Because if running backs aren't getting paid, then what makes you think a running back that can't run the ball is going to get paid? Like he's more island of misfit toys than should be in the same conversation as Saquon and them trying to get paid, in my opinion.
I agree to an extent, but the thing is too, you could always, and it's the Chargers' fault for not doing this mainly. You could always just bring in a guy for those situations where you really need to run in between the tackles. I don't think that he could really be the domino that starts the chain reaction of running backs getting paid. I think he'll eventually get paid if he continues to be good as a result of these other dominoes falling. So I'm not saying the guy shouldn't get paid. I just don't think he should be the first guy to get paid.
No, absolutely not. I can get behind that. Yeah, he's not a needle pusher. He's just, even though he's the head of the NFLPA, I was about to call him a follower. That would be a bad way to put it. He's somebody that, like you alluded to, is more of somebody who benefits from others in these types of situations off the field than I feel like he is an actual needle pusher. But sorry, go ahead.
I think I'm going to defend him here a little bit. 'Cause, I mean, when talking about the second half of the Jacksonville game, I think it's important to include the context of, both of you have mentioned Joe Lombardi, part of his biggest issues, which is kind of, been swept under the rug, his running scheme. And, he was calling runs to the left side where it was Foster Sorrell and the ghost of Matt Filer. It's just like, I mean, I think that played such a big factor as to why the Chargers weren't able to run out the clock because his running scheme is just that bad. So, like, I don't think, the reason why the Chargers weren't able to run out the clock is totally on Eckler. I mean, obviously that's a weakness in his game, but, like, I don't think that, that was the he was the main reason for the second half rushing.
Sure. And maybe I should have explained that a little bit better. I don't think all the blame is on Eckler either. I'm just saying he wasn't doing anything to help the situation, right?
Definitely.
Whereas in the league today, there's a lot of backs that aren't nearly as talented as Eckler that could have done what he needed to do. Hell, there's a fullback on your roster. I know you and I have talked about this. There's a fullback on your roster that could have done what Eckler needed to do in that situation. And a lot of that, sure, is on Lombardi and the team as a whole just not using or not finding ways to balance out Eckler's weakness. But my point more with that, and I think Patrick hit the nail on the head, is that somebody like Eckler that isn't a complete running back, because he's not. There is no world where Eckler's a complete running back, is going to push the needle and make a change and make a difference in the market himself. And that's kind of more what I was alluding to. So I probably should have worded that a little bit better. That's on me. But yeah, Lombardi definitely played a big role in that collapse. And you could, honestly, and maybe this sounds a little dick ridery, and I don't care if it does because it's the truth. I'm pointing fingers at everybody on that roster not named Justin Herbert for that game, if I'm being totally honest. Because it was rough all around. I know Herbert didn't necessarily have the greatest second half, but it also was a result of having to kind of take over himself and not having the support that he needed, more so than him playing poorly, if you ask me.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was going to move on. If you have something else to add, go for it.
I definitely think, even though the haters certainly had a field day with that one.
Mhm.
I don't. While I kind of have the balance of, I don't think Herbert played his best game. I don't think he played the.
Sure.
I don't think he's like totally innocent, but like to put all the blame on him is just, completely arrogant, and I think it's just being willfully ignorant of all the context of that game.
Absolutely.
Welcome to the NFL media, right? A team
Yeah.
Pretty
is
much.
pinned on the quarterback. That's just how it is.
Yeah. Um, but looking at some of the numbers for the Chargers last year, something I've really dove into with this series is talking about the EPA per play numbers. And I know I was just shitting on Eckler, but like I said, he's somebody that kind of thrives on explosive plays. So the Chargers were 18th in rushing, which is, just under mediocre. They're middle of the pack. And a lot of that does come from those big explosive plays and running the ball to the outside. They were 14th in passing, which is criminal given the quarterback that they have. There is no world where they shouldn't be top 10. Even with the injuries to the receiver core, I don't care. Justin Herbert was not used correctly last year at all, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into the scheme. They had the worst rush defense in terms of EPA per play. They were 32nd, ninth in coverage. And then looking at points scored, they were 13th in points scored with 391, 22nd in points allowed with 384, and then 11th in point differential with 7, which I don't know why, but I find that really funny that their point differential was a single touchdown. Um, but I think the numbers illustrate pretty well what the issue was with the Chargers last year. And that's that, like I already mentioned, Justin Herbert simply was not used correctly. And there were a lot of unfortunate injuries that really held the defense back. Now, coverage, they managed to, kind of overcome that. And we'll talk about the DB, specifically one that I know Tyler's a big fan of here when we start talking about the scheme and whatnot. But the big issue was the injuries in the front seven, specifically on the defensive line, where both Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack missed time last year. And there just wasn't a real way to make up for that because, they have one of the better edge tandems in football. And when both of those guys are not on the field, issues are going to arise, right?
Uh,
So, sorry, go ahead.
I don't actually think Khalil Mack missed any time last year. I mean, I hate to be that
Really?
guy.
He
Oh,
was
yeah.
he was healthy the whole year.
What?
Yeah.
Fuck.
He simply has that dog in him, Miller.
He
He was just
simply
double teamed a lot.
okay. Hold on, let me double check that because I'm gonna have to completely cut
Do you
that
want me
out.
to go
I
over
refuse to
my
sound like an
Do you
idiot.
want me to go over my interesting numbers as you do this?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
All right. So one of the easiest
God, yeah,
ways
he
to
played in all
display
17 games. Fuck me, dude.
one of the easiest ways to display Herbert being completely misutilized is one statistic that the Chargers really stand out in. Average depth of target. I like to call it the quarterback crutch number. Why the hell is his average depth of target 6.6? That's like with Daniel Jones. Like that's in that area. Why are you holding Justin Herbert's hand the same amount that the Giants are hand holding Daniel Jones? Why are you doing that? This guy has an absolute rocket arm. Let's throw a bunch of checkdowns. Let's make an entire offense out of dink and dunking. It doesn't really make sense to me. That is beyond baffling in my mind.
Yeah, you want to know a great number that adds to that? They were third in hitch routes targeted with 87.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
87 hitch routes last year
I
with
mean,
Justin Herbert as their
they
quarterback.
brought someone in who is really damn good at doing stuff on hitch routes, but we'll get to him later.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, no,
It's
I don't.
it's like it's just that as you mentioned, Miller, before, the injuries, with the offensive line and the receiver core. Obvious, I get the injury part, but like Lombardi was just not creative when asked to be creative. All
No,
right, it seemed like
absolutely
he
not.
was he was spamming stick and curl. It's just like, all right, I can kind of understand it to a point, but like that cannot be all you call. You gotta mix some sort of creativity in there. I mean, last year, obviously, he wasn't really asked to be creative, and the offense was a top 5 unit because I mean they were healthy. But like this year, when asked to be creative, he just was not creative at all. It's just, I think that was kind of the biggest reason as to why he got fired.
Yeah. And even with the injuries, namely in the receiver court, there's no reason why the Chargers, like Patrick mentioned, should have had a lower average depth of target than the Chicago Bears. Like, that is horrific. Like, again,
It's
you
not
talk about,
necessarily bad. Yeah. I just want to. You said horrific. Like it's not.
but
It's not bad
with
to
Justin
have
Herbert.
with Justin Herbert. Yes, with
Yeah,
Justin
it's
Herbert is
horrific.
bad.
That's
But
my point.
just
Given the
having an
context.
average depth of
Well,
target.
no, as it
That's
stands,
low.
average depth of target, it depends on the quarterback. But
Yeah,
when you have a quarterback
exactly.
who's one of, if not the best deep ball passer in football, it's
Why
horrific.
the hell aren't you using it? There
Right.
you go.
Yeah,
I just wanted to put that to light. That average
okay.
depth of target.
Okay, Patrick, with your semantics. I think the people out there are smart enough to pick up on the context, okay?
All right,
This
my
guy.
bad.
Yeah, but looking at some of the other passing numbers here, they were 14th in play action percentage with 27.9% of their passing plays being out of play action. 17th in average time to throw, which is really weird when paired with their average depth of target being so low, because that means even despite, running very simple, short, quick routes, guys were either struggling to get open or Justin Herbert just didn't trust those guys, which either or is very possible, and in the case of Herbert, pretty valid considering the injuries he was dealing with there. They were 27th in air yardage percentage with 48.3%. God, I have a lot of notes about that average depth of target. I really wanted to bring that up. Patrick beat me to it. It was bad. Just close out. It was bad. 22nd in big time throw percentage with 3.3%. Again, with Justin Herbert, unacceptable. He should be top 3 to 5 every single year because you need to be unleashing this guy's talent and letting him take shots down the field. And thankfully, he's going to be able to do that this year because at the very least, Kellen Moore is not going to put this man on a leash or like one of those child leashes where it's a monkey backpack and they've got the straps on it. That's what it felt like Justin Herbert had on him all of last year. And I don't think Kellen Moore is going to allow that to happen. And then 12th in yards per attempt. Nothing crazy there. But yeah, it's just really infuriating to look at the passing numbers last year. And like I've said, I am pretty sure, I'm very hopeful at least that it'll be a little bit different this year with Kellen Moore at the helm. So Patrick, go ahead, do your thing. Talk about Kellen Moore.
Oh, Kellen Moore already. Okay. And then we'll get to the defense after this, I imagine, yeah?
Run game and then defense, yeah.
Okay. So, Kellen Moore, it is very clear if you watched Cowboys film last year. This is a double-edged sword for the guy. He's really creative, sometimes too creative. Cough, cough, last play of the 49ers game, Zeke at center. What the hell are you doing? Right?
Yeah, we don't want Eckler doing that.
Yeah. But he is absolutely a very creative offensive mind. Now, I'm not going to praise this guy as much as I did praise Ben Johnson in that Detroit Lions episode that I was on, because I do like Kellen Moore, not quite to that extent. And now I'm going to name another issue I kind of have with Kellen Moore. When he is in 12 personnel, you know they're going to run the ball. And he runs 12 personnel a decent amount. He has a very clear tell.
Yeah, they were 10th in running 12 personnel last year, and then they ran the ball 63% of the time out of 12 personnel.
Yeah, exactly. And then when they were in 11 personnel, you knew that they were going to pass it. They ran it, I think 34% is the number.
Something like
out
that,
of 11. Yeah. My major concern with him is that. But with that said, I can't hold it against him too much because the way that he designs his running game isn't too untraditional, but he calls these plays at the perfect time. You watch the Bengals game. I was inspecting the All-22 film of this game last night. And the Cowboys liked to run outside zone a decent amount going into that game. It was one of their big plays, Tony Pollard going outside. It worked well. But the Bengals were lining up in a bear front. And that is kind of a counter to outside zone. As a result, Kellen Moore called GT, which is when both the guard and the tackle pull, and it worked really, really damn well. They only had to run GT twice in the fourth quarter, and then the Bengals completely stopped running that bear front, and now they could go back to running outside zone. It worked very well for him, and this is something you'll see him do consistently. So yes, he has his tells. Yes, he gets a little bit too creative at times. But the guy is an above average offensive coordinator. And as much as he'll make some head scratching decisions, stuff like having an offensive lineman as a fullback, it makes you say, what the hell is he doing? But then you watch Connor McGovern wipe a guy out, and then you're like, yeah, okay, let him do what he wants. But then you also see stuff like the 49ers game, and then you say, what the hell is he doing again? So it will be a little bit painful at times, Tyler.
Yeah,
but it will also be great at times. It'll be a little bit inconsistent, but he's great.
Yeah, I feel like 75% of NFL fans just do not like their offensive coordinators, or have at least said fire them at least once. So I'm knowing how overreactionary Chargers Twitter can be. I am kind of anticipating, the first time he makes a head scratching decision against one of the top defensive minds of the league, like, I don't know, week 1 against Vic Fangio, I immediately think they're going to be like, man, why did we hire this guy? I think even as much as they hate Lombardi, at some point, it would not surprise me if they said bring back Lombardi or
something. If anyone says that, tag me in the comments, and I will go relentless.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen similar stuff. Obviously, the Bears a year ago now got rid of Matt Nagy, who was at least on pace with, or on par with Lombardi in terms of being an awful play caller. And I have seen Bears fans say they want Nagy back, so it'll happen. You just got to ignore those people or tag Patrick and let him go at him like a wild rabid dog. But something I find interesting, and Tyler, maybe you have some thoughts on this, is like Patrick said, Moore likes to run a lot of 12 personnel, and he likes to run a lot out of 12 personnel. And that worked with the Cowboys because the Cowboys' tight ends were pretty traditional in-line blocking tight ends that, caught the ball on occasion. Chargers are the complete opposite. Their tight end room outside of Trey McKitty is pretty pass-catching oriented. So I don't know if maybe there's someone you expect to take a step as a blocker this year, or if you just think we're going to see a hell of a lot of Trey McKitty. But do you have any expectations or any thoughts about what Moore might do with that, or if you think he's going to have to change up his 12 personnel usage or anything like that?
Okay, first off, God, no more, no lot of Trey McKitty, please, like, no. God, and I think, when you said outside of Trey McKitty, it's pretty pass catching. I think it's mainly because the dude is butterfingers and cannot catch anything. So,
Sure.
but I think here's the thing. Donald Parham is like I always look at him, I'm like, okay, this guy's 6'9" or something, and he's a hell of a blocker. And well, like in the limited time we've seen him, he's a good run blocker and such. And he has that he has receiving upside, and I think Gerald Everett's a pretty good pass blocker. But here's the thing, it's like with Parham, the dude just cannot stay on the field. Whatever it be, that freak injury against Kansas City, or the hamstring got him out for weeks. Like, he just cannot stay healthy. So I feel like, either if you want the Moore system to work, you're gonna have to rely on Parham for 17 games, which he has not shown. Or, I remember after the draft when it was anticipated the Chargers were going to take a tight end, maybe even Michael Mayer early in the first. I think Moore kind of went out and said, we did a lot of stuff in Dallas, but I think we're going to do a lot of stuff differently here. So I feel like, we might see a little bit of a shift in Moore's offensive perspective, and I think we'll see, him adjust to the personnel he has in LA.
No, make me pretty happy if that guy decided to throw out 12 personnel in favor of 21 personnel, but I guess we'll see there. Hell, maybe he gets weird and puts Horvath at tight end a little bit, and that's where he gets his usage, because that's one thing I am scared about with Kellen Moore is he really wasn't a traditional fullback user, and Xander Horvath really impressed me last year. I liked what I saw out of him, and I'm really hoping his snap counts don't get diminished for that reason. But looking at the run game, and specifically the types of runs Kellen Moore and Joe Lombardi ran, was really similar. There was some difference, but for the most part, they were both right around league average and outside zone. Lombardi using it a little bit more. He was 15th, where Moore was 16th. Lombardi relied a lot more on inside zone than Moore, with 14th versus 20th. They were both smack dab at 11th in running duo. The Chargers favored power a little bit more than Kellen Moore did, 14th versus 26th, but Dallas did favor counter a little bit more, 17th versus 24th. They were both tied for 13th in draw, and then Dallas ran a lot more pin and pull, which Patrick alluded to a little bit. They were 7th, whereas the Chargers were 17th. So for the most part, it's going to be a pretty similar run game. Like I said, and like Tyler was just talking about, it'll be very interesting to see how Moore adapts because of the personnel he has. And he's somebody that I think is pretty flexible, somebody that's pretty good at adapting with his personnel. So I'm really excited to see what that's going to look like for the Chargers. But moving over to the defense, which is going to be pretty similar to what the Chargers had last year, considering there wasn't any big turnover. I know this isn't going to be a surprise for Tyler when I bring this up. But the more I watch the Chargers defense, the more I realize that Michael Davis is the cog that makes everything work. He is legitimately the key to their defense functioning. So, Tyler, if you'd like, go ahead and say your piece about your boy.
Oh, I have been waiting for this one. Okay. So it's actually kind of funny. If you were to tell me a year ago today that I would be pushing this Michael Davis agenda at an insane level, I don't know if I'd believe you. But I mean, because the first year he signed his extension, he had some off the field mental health issues and such, and he also was injured, which took away his confidence. So I feel like that year was kind of a wash for him. And then, this year you could really see why they chose to extend him, because he was physical. He's got the perfect build for a corner. He's tall, he's fast. He can run with pretty much anyone. Like, he was running with Tyreek Hill that entire game against Miami. And, aside from the unfortunate trip, but like, he's been able to go stride for stride with a lot of even the league's best corners. And, you look at most advanced stats, like he was fifth in forced incompletion rate. There's a one chart where he's like at the very top left, where all these other elite corners are, like a little bit below Sauce Gardner. And it's just he truly earned a starting role this year, I feel like. And I'm really happy for him, just like to get over his stuff. And I'm really excited to see what this year 3 is going to look like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the big thing, and you mentioned it, is his physicality and his ability in press coverage. Because the reason I am so bold about his importance to this defense, why I'm so aware of his importance to this defense, is because this is a team that, Brandon Staley, obviously coming over from Vic Fangio, is going to run a lot of quarters. However, last year they didn't run as much quarters relative to the rest of the league as you'd expect. They were tied for 16th, so right smack dab in the middle, but they were top 5 in quarter, half. And what they would do is, on that side where you have one DB that's in press man coverage, it was always Michael Davis. And he was always fantastic at it. He's this great physical, big body press corner that plays a role very similar to Tariq Woolen in Seattle, who I talked about on this podcast, and somebody that I'll be talking about very soon. And this might be big praise, Pat Surtain in Denver, where the defense really relies on him just taking away the X receiver, whoever the number one guy is on the team. They're really heavily reliant on him taking him away. And like Tyler mentioned, he did that against Tyreek Hill, which is not an easy task. Granted, there was one play where he tripped, but that happens. Nobody's perfect. Jalen Ramsey's tripped before, right? It's part of football. It happens. But it's really surprising me, and this is something that I wasn't aware of until I sat down and, like Patrick has said 1,500 times at this point, watch the all 22 because we're big tape guys. And it's really apparent just how much they rely on Davis and how important he is to this defense. And I think because of that, we're going to see even more quarter half ran from them this year because he did get hurt last year. Because it's crazy. They had to completely switch their defense around when he wasn't on the field. And this is somebody that, even though he has this massive impact on this defense, really doesn't get a lot of attention or get a lot of praises when you're talking about the top corners in football. And I'm not trying to say you should put him on par with Sauce Gardner, Jalen Ramsey, or Pat Surtain or anything, but you'd be hard-pressed to find, I'd say, 12, 13, maybe 14 guys better than him in the league right now. So I love what he brings to the table. I love what he does for the Chargers defense, and he's somebody that I'm going to be very excited to watch for the rest of the year, or for this upcoming season, excuse me. But
hold on really quick. I just want to ask Tyler. So obviously JC Jackson had a down year. Like, that's an indisputable fact. Even before the injury, he was pretty damn bad, right? Would you say that Michael Davis's breakout that not even you expected, as you mentioned earlier, makes up for JC Jackson severely underperforming that contract?
Yeah, I think the prime time game against Denver, I think it was like week 6, kind of showed just how it made up. Because like the first half, he was like missing assignments and such, just making a bunch of mental errors. And they and the Chargers, they decided to bench their highest paid corner. They decided to bench, whatever. Like, I can't really quite remember how much he's paid, but like they decided
It's like
we're gonna bench
22
you.
mil per year or something. It's absurd.
It's something like that. And they decided to put in Michael Davis, and like next thing you know, the Broncos was just lost. It looked like how it was pre that game. The first half it was the best the Broncos offense had looked all year, And then Michael Davis comes in and it's just like, okay, Cortland Sutton has just been completely erased now. So I mean, and the entire offense just kind of went down. I mean, both offenses do think that had Michael Davis not came in for JC Jackson, I do think that the Broncos probably would have won that game. And we probably get those nasty, turns out Russell Wilson just finally got it all together game,
Yeah. Also, Patrick, how dare you ask a question that's better than anything I was going to ask? Because that was something I wouldn't have even thought to ask. That was great.
I need to stop. I need to stop thinking I'm the host. Clearly,
yeah,
really.
Showing
I just need to learn my place.
Yeah, exactly. Know your role, buddy. But anyways, looking at the rest of the Chargers coverages, they were 12th in cover 0 with just under 2% of their snaps, 16th in cover 1 with 21% of their snaps, 26th in cover 2 with just under 6% of their snaps. They were 21st in cover 3 with 32.2% of their snaps. I already mentioned they were 16th in quarters with specifically 12.3% of their snaps, 5th in quarter half with 15.8% of their snaps, and then 11th in cover 5 with 2% of their snaps. So like I mentioned, very quarters heavy defense will continue because Brandon Staley is there. He's a Vic Fangio disciple. That's how these things work. And then jumping over to blitzing, which, as I mentioned earlier, Joey Bosa was hurt last year, and that makes a big difference as to how you're going to get pressure, because the Chargers ideally wanted to be able to get pressure with 4, and that just wasn't going to work without him there. And obviously, Brandon Staley likes to blitz as well. So you've got 12. They were 12th in the league on blitzing on third and short with 41.7% of their plays, third on third and medium with 55.9% of their plays, 14th on third and long with 37.1% of their plays. And then when they weren't blitzing, they were stunning. They were 7th with 51.5% of their plays. So very, run of the mill, what we're used to from Brandon Staley. So speaking of Brandon Staley, I did want to ask, because I feel like he's kind of a, how do I want to put this, polarizing head coach in the NFL. From both of your perspectives, and I'm sure I'll get two unique perspectives here. Do you think Brandon Staley's a good coach? Like, are you happy with him in LA, or is it one of those things where you're like, it's fine, I wish we could get rid of him, or just what are your thoughts?
So you asked two different questions there. You asked,
Fuck
am
you.
I happy? Again, with my semantics, you know me.
Uh-huh.
You asked two different questions. You asked, is Brandon Staley a good coach? And you also asked, are you happy with Brandon Staley in LA?
Yeah.
I would
Which
say
is
yes.
two different questions. I apologize for getting pissy at your semantics because you were right.
No, I'm not mad about it because I think you brought up something, a very clear difference that we need to bring up here.
Yeah.
I think that Brandon Staley is a good coach. I'm just about to use a semantic in my semantic. I think that Brandon Staley is a good coach. I just don't think he's a good head coach.
Yeah.
There's a very clear difference. I say this all the time between a good coordinator and a good head coach. Steve Spagnuolo, phenomenal example. There's so many guys. Eric Bieniemy, we need to see. He hasn't been a head coach yet. Josh McDaniels, I think, is an example of this. There's so many guys.
Vic Fangio, fantastic example.
Exactly, right? Todd Bowles is another one. I could go on for an hour just listing coaches.
I know you could, so let's cut it off there and move on.
But Brandon Staley on the Rams, I'm wearing this jersey because this guy was such a key part of that Brandon Staley scheme working. And now we're seeing what it looks like when Brandon Staley doesn't have future first ballot Hall of Famer Aaron Donald. You see how whenever you look up a running back's highlight tape, you see at least 3 clips of them going against the Chargers defense. It's either that or they didn't play the Chargers at all. It's because Brandon Staley doesn't have Aaron Donald, but he's still running the same scheme that he ran with Aaron Donald, at least in the front 7, right? Of course, like you mentioned earlier, the secondary changed what they do coverage-wise. And that's why we're seeing them get ran all over. When he can't completely prioritize the defensive side of the ball, bad things happen. They have the worst rushing defense in the league. Let me just give you an interesting stat that I find hilarious. They allowed the most yards per carry on zone concepts with 5.5 yards per carry. You want to hear what team allowed the second most? You want to hear what number it was?
I don't, but say it.
4.9. A 0.6 difference.
Who was second?
I did not write the team down. I'm just a terrible
this guy
guest,
didn't come
aren't I?
prepared. Yeah, horrible.
Yeah, how dare I? But overall, my point is this team is atrocious, at least in terms of run defense. And that's because Staley isn't a great team builder. And I know it falls on the GM a lot too. But he doesn't exactly have the right ideology in terms of building a team. He's a little bit too stubborn to be a head coach, if you ask me. Overall, he's a great coordinator, not a great head coach. At least that's my opinion on him. What do you think of him, Tyler?
I think, like when talking about run defense, there's just some stuff that, very easily could have been prevented. Because I think, one of the biggest issues was when Joey Bosa went down, you had Chris Rumph along the perimeter. And, you're relying on Chris Rumph on the outside to stop the run. And then you got Kenneth Murray right behind him. So, once the defender gets to the second level, then you got Asante Samuel Jr., who, even though is great in coverage, is short. So, is a pretty big liability and in a run defense. And they got Nasir Adderley, who was not good in run defense last year. It's just there are so many things that, could have been avoided with this run defense in terms of personnel. But it's just, so that's why I think the run defense was so bad, because the defender was able to get to the second level, and as soon as they got there, they were pretty much gone at that point. And which is why it's the linebacker position, which has literally frustrated me every time in the Staley era, because they got rid of Kaiser White, who went to Philadelphia for cheap, and the next thing you know, Eric Kendricks, even though is still a pretty good run defending linebacker, Drew Tranquil, he went to Kansas City for cheap. I feel like they could have pretty easily meshed well together, and it's just and then it turns out they actually do value linebackers, Like, originally they came in with the message, linebacker is just not this premium position. We're just not going to value it. And the next thing you know, they take Dion Henley in the third round. So it's just like this giant roller coaster of what are you doing when it comes to the linebacker position?
Yeah.
Staley and linebackers, yeah, that is
It's
how
like
that is.
It's like, and I think I know like they went into the season with like, I mean, originally three edge rushers because Kyle Van Noy was taking snaps at linebacker, but like they put him at edge, and originally he struggled, but then in that final 5 game stretch, as Miller mentioned, when they went 4-1, he kind of got healthy and came into his own, and turns out, and you notice that the defense was actually better, seeing as he was healthier, but like. The thing is, you can't just go into the season with three edge rushers, and you can't just go into the season, with Kenneth Murray as one of your starting linebackers, and behind him you got pretty much a bunch of special teamers. So it's like, there. While you can give him a pass for the personnel, it's just like there was so much stuff that could have been avoided.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think you both hit the nail on the head. First of all, Brandon Staley and his viewpoint towards linebackers shakes me to my core. Like I'm an old school football fan. Linebackers and fullbacks are my two favorite positions. So seeing a team that absolutely just didn't care about the linebacker position really pissed me off. And you saw it hurt them a lot because they couldn't defend the run. That was a big thing, and it has been for a little while now with Brandon Staley. And then on top of that, I definitely agree with Patrick in saying that he's a good coordinator, not a good coach. I think my big thing with Staley is he was touted as this great defensive mind coming out of LA, which he absolutely is. I don't want to discredit him there. But the thing that consistently holds back his team outside of injuries has been the defense. Whenever you look at the Chargers, anyone who isn't pushing some weird anti-Herbert narrative or agenda looks at this team and says, if the defense stepped up here, or if the defense stepped up there, or if they got a stop there, or if they gave Herbert an opportunity here, that's consistently what the downfall of the Chargers has been. And it's like Patrick mentioned, because he's kind of stretched thin worrying about the whole team. He doesn't have as much time to focus on the defense. So he's just kind of left it in like its default state where he's running the same thing he was running in LA, which is fine and dandy when you have arguably the best defender of all time on your team, but they don't anymore.
They
They're
have Jerry
working
Tillery.
right. Yeah.
Let's just ask Jerry Tillery to two gap every play, right? That'll work perfectly fine.
Yeah. Hey, Jerry Tillery, do you know how to cross chop? You know, like, yeah, it's ridiculous. And I wish, or I'm not, I wish, I hope Kellen Moore is able to help Justin Herbert out a little bit with his offense and take some of that pressure off of Staley's defense and allow Staley, like, I'll put it this way. I'm hoping that because Moore's there, Staley can focus on the defense a little bit more and he can work more with it. Because I think the personnel there got a good bit better during the offseason, which we're about to talk about. But something's got to give. Because Justin Herbert, he cannot do it all on his own. And that is essentially what the Chargers have been asking him to do, especially last year, but over the past couple years. And he's great. He's wonderful. He's a top 3 quarterback in the sport. He cannot do it all by himself. He needs some help because he's human and this is a team sport. And the Chargers simply have not given him any. But moving over to the offseason and starting out with free agency, there were a lot of losses, but none that are necessarily irreplaceable or, anything that's going to kill the Chargers long term. But I do want to ask, is there any player that hit free agency that, and this is kind of more geared towards Tyler, but Patrick, obviously, you can give your input as well, that made you upset? Was like one of your favorite players or somebody that you thought had potential that hadn't quite gotten there yet or anything like that, or just somebody you thought was a more important piece than I'm giving them credit for, and it is actually going to hurt the Chargers not having them on the team?
I think it would probably be Drew Tranquil. I mean, just solely because it's just like, I mean, I think he went to a divisional rival, obviously, and it's like only for $5 million, and it's just you don't really get a comp pick out of that. But I think
Mhm.
in terms of offseason, one move that actually really shocked me was the Nasir Adderley. He retired at age
Mhm.
25. It's like I truly thought he was gonna go somewhere else, maybe reunite with Gus Bradley in Indianapolis or something. But like, nope, it turns out like injuries really took a toll on him, and he decided I'm gonna retire at age 25. And I'm like, well, I mean, I originally thought, okay, Nasir Adderley, he didn't have the best seasons, but we'll get a comp pick out of it. Nope, he just retired. I mean, I truly wish him the best. I mean, I do feel sympathy for the guy because it does look like injuries did affect him this past season and have took a toll on him. And I wish him the best, but it was still just like a giant shock to me.
I would say Matt Filer, not because he was like overly good or anything with the Chargers, but having a veteran on that O line, I think it's pretty important. And I mean, they
Sure.
have Corey Linsley, don't get me wrong, but it is nice, you have an experienced guy like that, keep him around. They don't really have much depth at the guard spot either.
Mhm.
And I also thought that he was going to be their, common Kellen Moore. Oh, we need a fullback. I hate the fullback position, so I'll just send an O lineman out there guy. I really thought Filer was going to be that guy for them.
Listen,
It's going
it's
to be
Will
someone
Clapp.
else, but
It's Will Clapp. It has to be.
I hope so. That'd
Will
be
Clapp is
great.
the only player that I could stomach taking snaps away from Horvath.
I mean, here's the thing with like Filer. I mean, I was talking to before he got cut. I was talking to people on Chargers Twitter about this. They're like, "Oh, we can just keep him at depth," and it's like he is getting paid $6.5 million per
Oh, was
year.
he really? Oh,
If you are trying to keep that as depth, that is literally asking for bad roster construction. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, and they're like, "Oh, well, then you can just cut him and resign him for $1 million." I'm like, do you know what kind of humble that takes? First, we're cutting you from the team. Next, we're gonna pay you $1 million just to give you a demotion. Like, it's
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
There wasn't really a way. I agree with you. Yeah, there wasn't really a way to keep him around. But I'm just saying, both their guards are young guys. It would have been nice to have the veteran sit behind them. But
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough to really find one of these guys that I think is going to make a big impact leaving from the Chargers. Like notable names I've written down: Nasir Adderley, obviously with the retirement. Bryce Callahan, who I'm obviously a big fan of as a Bears fan, big part of the 2018 run for us, and is one of the best nickel corners in football. But he's not somebody that the Chargers necessarily needed, and he also can't stay healthy.
and he's
So
also old.
yeah, yeah. So it's not something that's going to hurt a lot. He's a very talented ball player, but it's not going to kill the Chargers to not have him on the roster. Kyle Van Noy, who Tyler talked about a little bit earlier, same kind of deal. He's good, but he's older, and you have other guys there. You don't really need him. Matt Filer, who obviously very expensive for a depth guard, not really going to work out there. Drew Tranquil, who, I mean, he's okay. I think you guys did a good job of replacing him and finding other linebackers, so it's not the end of the world, but obviously him going to a division rival, I'm sure that sucks. DeAndre Carter also went to a division rival, went to the Raiders. He played a lot last year because of injuries, but he's also not somebody that's a superstar. And then I have other names written down, but I think the only one worth noting here is Storm Norton, and this is addition by subtraction because
yeah,
he's
No,
bad.
he's
I don't
very.
want to talk about him.
I mean, that tells you all you need to know. Right there. That's
Yeah.
the perfect summarization of Storm Norton's tenure with the Chargers.
It was like I think it was like when Rashawn Slater got hurt and it was against Jacksonville and we asked Storm Norton to come in. He allowed 8 pressures in a quarter.
It's so
And
unfortunate that a dude with such a cool name sucks that bad.
I do I think in terms of free agency like order of people I'd miss, I'd actually probably put Kyle Van Noy at 1 just because you got Thule there. I think a veteran presence would have helped, but obviously you got
You got
I think
Khalil.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think Kyle Van Noy was quite good for us, but age regression is a very real thing. Look
Sure.
at Van Noy and Callahan. I'm like, am I totally sure that you're going to come back and play at the same level that you did?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, couple other names now that I'm looking at it. Chase Daniel. He is the backup of all time. One of the most notable backups ever. Brandon Fiocco, Troy Reeder, Michael Bandy. Like, nothing there that's really worth noting, really. I was just naming names because I feel like someone in the comments would get mad if I didn't. But moving over to retained free agents, there's, again, not a lot to talk about, but there's definitely some interesting stuff here. Donald Parham staying around, who, like Tyler mentioned, can be a big part of this offense if he can stay on the field. Massive dude, has upside as a pass catcher, good blocker, could definitely vibe well with Kellen Moore. Trey Pipkins, who I think is actually quietly developed pretty solidly on the Chargers offensive line, at least as like a swing tackle. Morgan Fox, who is just a guy that fits their scheme really well. He's a super, super niche type of player, like the epitome of a 4-eye, so to speak. And then some other names.
Underrated.
Yeah, for sure. A couple other names: Easton Stick, Cameron Dicker, the kicker, who was it last year or the year before that y'all cycled through like 7 different kickers?
I mean, last year we had 3 kickers kick extra points for us. It was like I think it was Hopkins, and then it was some other guy, and then it was Dan.
Okay. And then other names: Jalen Guyton sticking around, Will Clapp, J.K. Scott, Keeman Hall, and then Foster Sorrell. Solid group to keep around. A lot of depth there. Some nice potential wild cards, things like that. And then when I was doing my research for this, I looked up the Chargers free agent additions, and I sat and stared at this page and laughed for a solid 2 minutes because it's Eric Kendricks, which is great. Nicholas Williams, and that's it. Just 2 linebackers. That is all the Chargers did in free agency. Was they brought in Kendricks, who, like we've already mentioned, is a big upgrade over what they had at linebacker. Sure, he's a little bit older, but he's still very instinctive. He's a good tackler, smart in coverage, and he's going to be a fantastic mentor for a linebacker we're going to talk about here when we get to the draft. And on top of that, he's a lot rangier than the linebackers the Chargers had last year, even with being older. So I think he's a fantastic addition for them. And then Nicholas Williams, I'm going to be honest, I have no fucking clue who this guy is, but he is also a Charger now.
Yeah, he's a defensive lineman camp body. Yeah.
Okay, cool. He's also on the roster. So moving over to the draft, because there's actual things to talk about here. Unless
Kendricks?
Okay, Patrick.
We're just going to gloss over Eric Kendricks? I mean, you said the name, but I think that's pretty monumental.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, he's instinctive. He's a lot rangier than what the Chargers had at linebacker.
The run defense was so bad last year. Just adding a linebacker who was established is so big.
Sure.
It is so big. Absolutely. Yep. It's that, and then I just really quickly want to say something that, because like you said, they didn't really do much during free agency.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say one major thing that they didn't add that is really easy to add. They could still just add it right now, and I'm kind of just waiting for the notification on my phone. Chargers sign Ezekiel Elliott. Chargers sign some running back that could run in between the tackles. We talked about it earlier, but I have never in my life seen a team lose a game, a playoff game, mind you, for such a clear reason and then do nothing to fix it. I have never seen that before in my life.
I think it's just like
insane to me.
Yeah, I think it's because they're pretty analytically approached, and I think they see it as, the offensive line and scheme is more important than the running back itself. And I think, they're saying, okay, Slater and Pipkins on the outside, that's nice. We've got 2 guards we like, and they did address the offensive line depth. So I think, they're like, okay, the offensive line and scheme are good. We can just, maybe there's something there with Spiller. Joshua Kelly's improving. So I think they're kind of just putting a lot of trust in what's in the building.
They're good backs, but you watch them play, they all kind of do the same thing. I'm not going to lie. The 3 running backs they had behind Eckler are all the same person. They all do the same exact thing. Am I wrong in saying that? They run the same. Some may be better than others. Like I would probably say I like Roundtree a decent amount. And
what?
What?
Oh my god. Roundtree is like a special teams body at best, I think.
Oh, so you don't like him at all?
Well, the thing
okay.
is with Roundtree is he is a literal snail.
Sure. But that's kind of what I'm saying. I want like a change of pace guy to complement Eckler. I'm not saying get rid of the other three. I'm saying replace one of the three with, even if it's not Ezekiel Elliott or a big name like Kareem Hunt or something, just bring in someone that could just run in between the tackles. Oh, hey, we're up 27 points. Let's pound the rock in between the tackles. Just someone. Even we're going to get to the draft. Drafting an Israel Abanikanda or someone just to pound it makes no sense how they just didn't.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like Tyler said, the analytics of it don't make it make sense, but at least I gives their approach reasoning. I was going to say justify, but I also don't think that's the right word. Like, they have their reasoning for it. And I think
one roster spot, just one.
Yeah, but
you have four of the same guy.
Yeah, but that's money they have to put towards a running back, and they probably want to put that money elsewhere, like all the other teams in the league apparently want to. I mean, I agree. If I were them, I would have drafted a running back, and that's a good segue into talking about.
There was probably someone.
Yeah,
off the top
looking
of my
at
head,
they definitely could have. Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, yeah, I do. I think what you were about to say is like, I definitely think they could have drafted someone. And I mean, I do. I look at Dalvin Cook is rumored to sign with the Jets, and it's like they got Israel Abanikanda, man. We could have put him to such better use. Now you got, now you just got to wash person up over Israel and like taking all the touches away from him, and it's like, what could have been?
When was Zach Evans drafted? I know he was drafted by the Rams. It was late. They could have used, maybe not the Duggan pick. I don't know if it was that late. They could have used one of the other choices. I'm pretty sure round 4.
I would have taken it. Yeah, the 4th round. That's where I would have taken a running back, because I do not like what they did at all.
It was a returner, right?
It was Darius Davis. Yes.
Yeah. And he's mainly considered a returner.
He's considered a football player.
He's one of those. He's one of those. Those always work.
So before we jump into talking about the draft at large, I just want to ask, what was your favorite pick that the Chargers made?
I think it was probably Henley. That I like, just in terms of value and such. I had him as like a top 2 linebacker in the draft. It was between him and Campbell, and like I do, in terms of the recent Tom Telesco 3rd round picks since Keenan Allen, it's just been a bunch of projects and, betting on traits kind of guys. But with Henley, it's actually like a proven player, even though, he's only played the position for not too many years, but he's still shown like he's got all this stuff and his ceiling is super high. But at the very least, you're going to be getting a good special teams body year 1. And I do think, Kendricks, as Miller, I think you mentioned earlier, like Kendricks can be a nice mentor to him. And I think it does give Kenneth Murray a shorter leash, seeing as he has not lived up to that 1st round.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to think. So I'm not a big fan of the player Quentin Johnston, but it was a big thing with me during the entire like pre-draft, pre-day 1 process. So think about all the hype that was going on at the time. It was a big thing. There are 31 teams that if he goes to, he'll be a bust. The other team was the Chargers. He went to the only team that I think his career will work out. So because of that, I really like the pick, because worst case scenario, they have their legitimate speed guy. And best case scenario, I mean, we see the talent. Everyone sees the talent. So I was a big fan of that pick.
Yeah. I agree. My favorite pick from them was Dian Henley. I'm with you, Tyler. He was my 2nd highest rated linebacker. And I think not only can he learn from Kendricks, but I think him and Kendricks could work well alongside each other. And I think by the end of the season, we will see that. But like I was kind of alluding to, the one pick in this class that really stands out to me is the Darius Davis pick. And the reason it stands out to me is because it reminds me a lot of a pick that a certain team from the Midwest may or may not have made last year where they took an overhyped returner and then he sucked. And of course, I'm talking about the Chicago Bears with Velus Jones. Yeah. That's what this pick is to me. Like, I get it. You want speed. That's what the Chargers need. You need speed. There were way better speed guys out there. Tyler Scott, who ironically went to the Bears, was still there. He was leaps and bounds better as a receiver than Darius Davis. You want a guy that can be a returner? Charlie Jones from Purdue was still there. Again, leaps and bounds better than Davis, both as a returner and as a wide receiver. He fumbled the ball 5 times on punts in college. 5 times. That is not a receiver you take in the 4th round. That's a UDFA that you hope you can give Stickum to somehow, right? Like, he's explosive as a returner. Don't get me wrong. I get why he's an exciting player, but if you're going to fumble, who the fuck cares? If you can't catch the ball, what's it matter? You know, he's somebody that literally you're going to have to use as a pure gadget guy and, you know, bring in on like jet sweeps and screen passes and stuff. But again, he wasn't even the best guy available to do that. So I really, plus he's like the smallest receiver ever. I don't remember his height off the top of my head, but he is like smaller than Tank Dell tiny. Yeah, he's tiny.
Something about this draft and really small players.
Yeah. I with the Darius Davis pick, I remember like early on in the draft process when I was looking at receivers. So I'm like, there's no way Carter comes back. You know, he's not a good kick returner, and you know, there's not really much you can ask him to do as a receiver. I was looking at Darius Davis. I'm like, okay, this guy is legit fast, which is something the Chargers haven't had in a while, and I like him as both a kick and punt returner. So yeah, Chargers should take him. And then next thing you know, they do take him, but like 4th round, I'm like, that's quite the rich. That's pretty rich for me. The moment I made it, I'm like, the moment that pick was made, I quoted it. I'm like, nailed it. I called it. But at the same time, I was kind of thinking like, maybe they could have done that later. You know?
Yeah, sure.
I think like, you know, I had that graded as a C, somewhere in the C range, but it was like either plus, blank, minus, or whatever. It was my second lowest in the whole entire class. Lowest, obviously, being Duggan.
See, I gave him a D- when I did my draft grades, which if you want to check that out, there should be a link in the description. Quick plug there. But I like this pick less than the Duggan pick, and it's not because I think Duggan's great or anything. He's just a backup quarterback in the 7th round, and I think the process there was a lot better. I don't know. I don't see the redeeming qualities in Darius Davis, especially considering some of the guys that were still on the board. Again, if this is the 7th round or even, you know, right after the draft signing UDFAs, different story. He would have been 5 there, but in the 4th round, I think that's a major reach. Some of the other picks here, Tuli Tuipulotu is someone that broke my heart because I was a big fan of watching, and then I was looking at some of the numbers and found out he missed 31% of his tackle attempts as a senior or his last year in college. And then I went back. Yeah. And then I went back and rewatched. I was like, oh no. Like, I know I get yelled at it a lot for overrating it, but I do believe it's very important for a player to know how to tackle when they get to the NFL. So that's something I'll dock guys for. Granted, he's about to go to work with one of the best run defending edge rushers we've seen in our lifetimes in Khalil Mack. So hopefully Matt can whip him into shape. And if that's the case, he's going to be really cool. Still, at worst, he's like a really nice rotational edge. So Tuli was a good pick. I like him. He's strong.
Better than Rump, definitely.
Absolutely.
And the thing I find great about that pick is, like you said, what he needs is time. He has the physical ability and all this stuff. His lateral agility, very impressive. He has so much physical talent. It's just he needs time on the bench. He got drafted to the Chargers. Hopefully Joey Bosa stays healthy this year. He gets his time on the bench that he needs, and then give it 1-2 years, stud.
Right. Exactly. And then some of their other picks, Jordan McFadden, who is someone that I actually changed my mind on after the draft. I wasn't a huge fan of going into it, but after the fact, I went back and looked, and he reminds me a lot of Zach Tom from the Green Bay Packers, who I was pretty high on. Not quite as good, but he's an athletic lineman with good play strength. He's just kind of short. So he's somebody that for now will be good depth. maybe in the long run takes Sawyer's job as the other starting guard. And then Scott Matlock, who is essentially Morgan Fox Jr.
He's your player, Miller. He like his attitude is just, the moment he was drafted, he said, I want to eat, I want to crush souls. And I immediately thought, oh yeah, Miller's gonna have a fun time.
I do. I love Scott Matlock. Like, he's somebody that, isn't going to get a lot of attention and isn't honestly going to get a lot of PT right away. But he's just like you said, he's my type of player. He's a hard-nosed, hard-working, punch you in the mouth type of guy. And I'm really excited to see what he's going to do. Like I said, he's going to kind of be attached to like Morgan Fox's hip right away just to learn from him, because that's essentially what he is. He's going to be Morgan Fox's eventual replacement. And the Max Dugan, I mean, he's got the chemistry with two of your wide receivers now. Unfortunately, it should just be one, but two of them. And he's an okay backup. He's somebody that is this who I think you were the first one to have the take, and then other people took it. Is he who you compared to Taylor Heineke, or was that a different one of the quarterbacks?
Oh yeah. I said Max Duggan is Taylor Heineke if he tried too hard to be Josh Allen.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. Was a beautiful comp. Absolutely beautiful, and it's very accurate. Yeah. I won't lie, I stole that when I was writing in my notes. I worded it differently. I said Taylor Heineke if he dreamt he was Josh Allen or something. But yeah, that's essentially what he is. So he's a fine backup. He can have some fun moments. I'm sure he's somebody that fans are going to actually be entertained by in the preseason at the very least. And who knows, if you want to go the route that the Chiefs go, where they take Mahomes off the field for like QB sneaks and stuff because you don't want to get him hurt, then I think Max Dugan can be great for that. So he might have a role. He might do a little something. At the very least, I don't think he can be any worse than Easton Stick. So
yeah, and Stick's like only there for the year, I think, and then he's gone.
But I think the good thing about that situation is Easton Stick gives him a reasonable kind of landmark for this season. The goal for him is gonna be to become the QB2.
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
absolutely.
That's way better than trying to shoot for the stars. Oh, Max Duggan, you're just locked in as a backup. There's no shot you overtake Justin Herbert's spot. Meanwhile,
Absolutely.
Easton Stick, that's reasonable, right? So I think that's a good thing there.
I think, like, I really try to avoid this phrase, just because it's gotten so memed. But I think Duggan is actually like sneaky athletic.
He is. Unironically, he is. I agree 100%. So yeah, I think the Chargers did really well in the first 3 days of the draft. Like you guys mentioned, Diane Henley's awesome. I think he's going to work really well for them. Quentin Johnston, at the very least, adds an element to the Chargers offense that they didn't have, both with speed and after the catch ability. My only concern with Johnson is there's not, I hate to say this about a professional athlete because but my big issue, and like I said, I hate to say this about a professional athlete because he's a pro and I'm some college kid sitting on my ass watching tape, but I do question his heart at times, just because there were a lot of times last year, and this could be a result of playing with Max Dugan as your quarterback, which fair if so. It just seemed like as the game went on, he grew bored and he would stop trying as hard on his routes and when trying to run block and things like that as the game developed. You're not going to get bored with Justin Herbert at quarterback. So hopefully that gets sorted out. And if it does, I think he'll be pretty damn good.
I also hope he learns how to catch, learns how to run better routes, learns how to do plenty of the aspects of being a good wide receiver. But he is still very fast. So you know what?
He'll
still have
falling at camp.
Yeah, I'm not as worried about his route running. I like it's
I
not
think he's pretty good at that aspect.
I think he has bigger fish to fry.
Sure.
Like my big thing with him is the contested catches.
I love it when I have a 6'4" receiver that can't bring down anything. Meanwhile,
35% contested catch rate last year.
Meanwhile, Josh Downs is 5'11".
Well, that's why Josh Downs is wide receiver 3.
I think I had him 5, but you know what? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're wrong and you're lame and you hate fun.
Well, it was a battle of mid after like JSN and Zay Flowers and like the rest of the 5. Like, so I mean, I didn't really go too much of rankings.
I don't know. I kind of
I do like it for the Chargers.
I went on. No, absolutely,
Yeah.
it's a great pick for the Chargers.
If it was
I
any
saw-
other team, I'm much more critical.
I
right now.
saw this comparison somewhere. I can't remember who it was. But ironically, they said Quentin Johnston reminded them of a juiced up, less technically refined Demaryius Thomas. And I think that is weirdly a really good comp.
Is it?
Yeah,
I think
seen
it
also.
My
I've seen some
memories of
stuff.
Demaryius Thomas tearing apart my former Pittsburgh Steelers might be warping that.
I mean,
I see it.
like I said, a
bit.
little less technically refined, but souped
little
up in
bit.
terms of athleticism. He's more athletic than Thomas was. I think they're going to serve a similar role. Is more what that's alluding to, just being a really good rack guy.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think he's gonna be for now. That's why I think it's such a good fit.
Right, and that's kind of my point, is he's a bigger guy that you would expect to be a 50-50 guy because of his frame, but in reality, he's a really good rack guy. And he's someone that, like, love Demaryius Thomas, and may he rest in peace. It's not like he was Devontae Adams out there. You know, he wasn't the most technically refined, perfect route runner with this extensive route tree. He was mostly like, I'm going to go downfield and I'm just going to get open. And then after that, everybody else can go fuck themselves. And that was kind of the Demaryius Thomas way. And I think Quentin Johnston's going to be similar.
I guess at the young age of 8 years old, I didn't have the full understanding of
nuances.
Yeah, I guess not.
I Kadarius Toney. I'd sure
I
hope
almost
you
said
didn't know much
Kadarius
about
Toney.
Kadarius.
I didn't mean Kadarius Toney. Demaryius Thomas. I knew who he was, obviously, but like Bronco.
Speaking of
great
Kadarius
player.
Toney, though, it's a good transition.
Yeah, no, that's why I did it.
Right. You read my mind, obviously. Transitioning into expectations for next season. The big question with the Chargers, I think everybody has, myself included.
What does that have to do with Kadarius Toney?
Can they challenge the Chiefs?
Oh, okay.
Can the Chargers overtake the throne in the AFC West and beat the Chiefs out for the division? Do you guys think that's possible next year?
No,
I would be blunt,
unless
probably not.
Crazy stuff. No, unless
Fair.
The loss of Bieniemy really hurts the Chiefs. Donovan Smith gets 50 holding calls throughout the season, which is completely possible.
It's attainable. That's attainable.
It definitely is.
Certainly.
And Kellen Moore I think it has to click right away.
Which, with Herbert, I think
could.
it absolutely could. Yeah.
But not just Herbert. That's the thing. We saw last year.
Absolutely,
what it looks like on the Cowboys when the receivers don't know the nuances of the scheme, because Dak went from a quarterback that was really good with ball control to a quarterback that turns the ball over a lot. So that's a big part of it, right? And it will be a big part of their season no matter what, whether they're fighting for a wild card spot or actually fighting with the Chiefs, which I doubt that's what's happening, but it could in theory.
I mean, in terms of head-to-head matchups, I do think I
agree. I think the head-to-head matchups could be really fun.
Yeah, but like in terms of divisional standings, probably not. I mean, I remember someone even, kind of told me one of the biggest Chargers issues over the past few years is they built their roster like to compete against the Chiefs, but not against the rest of the league. And I think it is kind of true. Because, when you look at their receiver core, it's a bunch of basketball players, and the Chiefs quarterbacks are all pretty small. So, I think their entire strategy with the wide receiver core is okay, can we dunk on these Chiefs corners, and I think just when you look at one of the biggest reasons they hired Brandon Staley is they're okay, this guy, he was able to take away explosive pass plays, and that's what the Chiefs thrive on. So, I mean, I think their entire process, hasn't been, can we compete with the rest of the league? It's been, can we compete with the Chiefs? Which I think
is now the Chiefs have more of an ability to run the ball with Pacheco.
Yeah.
You see them rocking the 12 personnel on occasion. A decent amount, too. Way more than you would have seen in 2019 from them.
Absolutely.
So now, is it even that? Right?
Yeah.
But I think they're also getting better. I think they're taking more strides towards actually building it to play against the other teams, the other 31, right? Or the other 30, I guess.
Yeah, they got to play themselves, right?
Maybe
Yeah.
They got to
we
beat
don't-
themselves in
know
practice.
We don't know what they might be going through. You don't know.
Taking fighting inner demons to a whole new level. You see an extra week added to the calendar. The Chargers have to literally play themselves.
I mean, I
feel like that-
remember.
Go ahead.
Okay, I remember when the Chargers were when it was the Chargers bye week and they somehow got even more injured that year.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just a giant mess. Someone said oh well, the Chargers, they didn't play anyone this week. They just kind of played themselves,
Yeah. I was gonna say it would be a very Charger thing to do to have to play themselves and then somehow lose.
I mean, I feel like there's no better example than 2011 when they were. That was 2011, right? When they were first in points scored, first in or 32nd in points allowed, yet they missed the playoffs somehow. Was that
I don't
2011?
remember the year, but yeah,
2011 or
That's why I
2010.
think. Yeah, I'm gonna use this to push an agenda I have. That's why I think Sun Devil. You see the flag right behind me. Sun Devil Ryan Ficken. They're a special teams coordinator. I mean, the Chargers were fifth in DVOA, which to me was a foreign concept. I'm like, what? We have a good special teams unit now? Like that can happen?
It seemed impossible.
Indeed. But that being said, last question I have for you guys, and this one is a two-parter. I'm going to tell you ahead of time this time. What are your expectations for the season coming up, record-wise specifically? You can either give me an estimation or a straight-up record prediction, or like a floor and ceiling, whatever you want to do. And then what player are you most excited to watch this year outside of Justin Herbert? Because that's kind of the obvious answer.
Right,
I mean, I almost want to say Rashawn Slater just to see him again, but I went with the tackle last time I was on, so I almost don't want to do that. Derwin. Kind of a basic answer, but the dude's a stud. There's no one else that will ever embarrass Kelsey the way that he did.
Yeah.
He suplexed him. Is that a suplex? I don't watch enough with
wrestling.
He did a cool move on him. That's all.
He did a cool move on him, indeed. Yeah. And the way he's used too, it's incredible. I love seeing him in that Staley defense. But yeah, I think that I do really like Rashawn Slater. For all my other short-armed kings, he really is he's a figure for them to look up to. Peter Skoronski, looking up to him. Yeah, I think those are the main two, I guess, for me.
Yeah, I think my right prediction right now is probably 10-7 or something. I obviously have to change with adjusted recent injuries that unfortunately happened, but I think heading into this episode I had 10-7, and I think the floor and ceiling was floor 7-8, 7 to 8 wins. Ceiling is probably 12 to 13, and I think in the middle you've got a 9 to 10 wins season or something like that. And I'm just kind of trying to keep it, in the middle, kind of reasonable, but I want to get too deep or too doom and gloom, And when I look at players who I'm most excited to see, you obviously got Michael Davis. I'm still really excited to see him, but I think most excited to see is probably I think I'm gonna go Slater just because I think this past season he was better than he was in his rookie year. Obviously limited samples, but he was looking better than he did look in his rookie year, and he was second team All Pro. And it seems when it comes to tackle discourse, everyone just kind of forgets about that, and that's annoying to me because I love Slater.
Mm-hmm.
I look at the offense, and it's just he was one of many people that was hurt, and even Herbert himself was hurt. And it's just to get that all these players back on that offense, you maybe even it's not an unreasonable expectation to expect 2021 levels of the top 5 offense maybe, or I'd say probably top 8, but if you were to tell me top 5 or top 3, I'd probably I don't want to sound too biased, but I would not see that.
Yeah. No, and I absolutely agree. When you have Justin Herbert, I mean, the the sky's the limit offensively. It's just about finding somebody that can allow him to play like himself and not hold him back as much as Lombardi did. As for me, player I'm most excited to watch, obviously, is Xander Horvath, but I can't just pick a fullback for every one of these episodes. So outside of Horvath, I would probably have to go with Khalil Mack, which is a little bit biased, but I'm excited to see him in a defense that is hopefully healthy, knock on wood, right? With Joey Bosa around and with Thule around, he ideally won't have to be on the field every single play. And I feel like that's great for Matt, because my big issue with him, dating all the way back to when he was in Chicago, was he's somebody that has just been asked to do a lot. And as he's grown older, his body can't deal with the wear and tear as much anymore. And that's why he's missed games. Granted, last year was kind of an exception. He was pretty healthy last year. And I think the year before that even, he was pretty healthy. So his health's starting to turn it around. And I think a big reason for that is the lack of dependence on him. Because in Chicago, he was the guy. He was getting triple teamed every play. And that's just not going to work. So I'm excited to see him in a defense. It's going to be a little more friendly to him with that. And hopefully everything can go well. And I'm also really excited to see Donald Parham, which is another thing, right? You got to worry about his health, and we've talked about that. But I am really excited to see what Kellen Moore's intentions are with him, because we've already established he's a great blocker. There's a lot of receiving upside there. When you have a dude that's that big and that physical, I think things can get really fun. So I think he's going to be somebody that's absolutely fun to watch next year. But with that being said, I think that about wraps us up. So before
9 and 7.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
You didn't let me.
17.
I thought we were doing it like go around, but all right.
Well,
my bad.
Tyler did his record.
Yeah, no, Tyler did both, so that's my fault. I wasn't in the
Yeah, you're an idiot. We know. I was in my record prediction. I'd say like 10 and 7, 11 and 6 is probably about where I'd have them too.
The weird thing, I'm looking at their schedule, and because I can't just take the mental notes right now.
It's kind of hard.
I'm looking on it. Yeah, I'm looking at it on playoff predictors where you're able to like click on the team you think is going to win, color, and it shows like their bye week. It shows every team and like if they have a bye the week before. They play 5 different teams that have the bye the week before playing them. Or I was including them. So 4 different teams. Still though,
pretty
that's
rough.
And one of them is Andy Reid off a bye.
Oh dear God.
Oh no.
Unless the red bye week means something else. Maybe that just means
it means that. It means that.
Oh, it does? Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's concerning. Then Ben Johnson and the Detroit Lions, not Dan Campbell and the Lions. Ben Johnson and the Lions. Week 10 off a bye. The Ravens off a bye. John Harbaugh. And
how deep into the season is that game?
The Ravens game?
Uh-huh.
Week 12. Why? You think Lamar might be down?
Well, I was going to say there's no guarantee they have a roster at that point. Although they did get rid of their they got rid of their training staff, so maybe not, but I got to see it to believe it.
I mean, the same kind of goes with the Chargers too, knowing us.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but the schedule
Max Duggan versus who's behind Tyler Huntley? Do they have anyone behind Tyler Huntley in Baltimore?
Did they? I feel like they brought someone in.
I honestly thought they were going to bring
definitely someone that could run.
That would have been funny. No, it's Josh Johnson. Johnson versus Max Duggan. Man. Book it.
the fight we've
is that game in? Hold on, is that game in LA or Baltimore?
It's LA.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say if it's in Baltimore, if that happens, I'll go to the game.
I'm thinking I'm gonna go to Chargers Bills just because they have that peacock.
There's a lot of games here that are, I think, like swing games because it's weird. They're playing a lot of teams that are like their team. Like Green Bay I think
that's disrespectful to the Chargers.
The Chargers are reasonably better.
Yes,
a lot of people have Green Bay. Some people are like,
dude, we don't know what they're doing at quarterback yet.
Yeah,
maybe that's a little bit biased, but we don't know what Jordan Love is.
Okay.
Yet. And I'm saying that in either way. I'm not saying Jordan Love sucks. I'm just saying he's a complete total question mark.
Would you
he
say
could be a Hall of Famer? Who knows?
Would you say that the Vikings are their tier? or no?
Yes, I would say
Yeah.
the Vikings are.
Would you
I'm a
say
little bit higher on the
Miami is their
Vikings.
tier?
Depending on where Tua's head's at, literally.
Well, it's week 1, so
Oh,
I
well
sure
then,
hope
yeah,
it's there.
I would say.
Would you say the Jets are better? I would say the Jets are much
Much
I
better
honestly
is
think
pushing it.
I think the
Okay.
Jets are Super Bowl contenders, honestly, and I think
I
a
mean,
lot of
well,
reasons.
Yes, if Aaron Rodgers doesn't do what he's been doing for the past 5 years in the playoffs. Probably 7 years, honestly.
well, he doesn't have to play the 49ers anymore. They can't hurt
Well,
him.
no, but he does this thing where during the normal season he'll play like an MVP, and then they get into the playoffs and he's checking it down on 3rd and 12th. Like he doesn't want to be the reason they lose in the playoffs.
Right.
I know how relevant this is to the Chargers, right?
Right.
Yeah, but I think it's weird for the Chargers looking at their schedule because they play a lot of teams that are like in their tier.
The
Yeah.
Chargers play the Bears this year. I forget what division
Yes.
the Bears play.
I don't think.
Yeah, they
wait, we do. Oh yeah, we do. Right.
The
No.
Chargers play the entire NFC North.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say I couldn't remember what division in the AFC the Bears played.
Yeah,
Okay.
the week 8 they play against the Bears in LA.
Tyler, you might have to block me for that week just in case. I don't know what direction it's gonna be in.
All right, we might have to make some bets for that when that time comes around. I'm not.
Well, the
Or
good thing is
like-
we both like each other's quarterbacks, so
Yeah, I actually well, don't we have like the Justin Fields hater on this podcast? I mean,
Oh yeah.
yeah, but we ignore him when it comes to talking about the greatest quarterback of all time. You shut up. This is my podcast. I can push whatever agendas I want to, and you have to just go with it. Cole Kmet's better than Tony Gonzalez. What are you going to do about it?
I'm gonna block you.
Good.
I'm
Finally, I've been waiting.
I'm gonna make a stitch, say no, and then do smash or pass with route concepts because
that's still your peak. That's still your peak.
Bro, why do you call it smash or pass with route? Just like
because he literally got a
smash concept and then said smash.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so it's not like
the
one route's like Sydney Sweeney and the other route's like.
I mean, no. All I'm gonna say is that dagger concept goes wild, bro.
Oh man. All right. We have gotten too off the deep end. I was about you said how much this has to do with the Chargers, and I was going to say this is the most off topic we've gotten. Now we're talking about. Never mind. Okay. Anyways, Patrick, do you have anything else on topic to bring to the table?
Well, I thought what I was saying before I got to that was pretty on topic.
It was. That's what I'm saying.
They're playing against a bunch of
that?
teams that are in their tier, right? I mean, they brought in a new DC. I know that, but it's still Staley's defense, right? I think that's pretty clear.
I mean, I think our DC right now is like I can't even remember his name. Like, it's not Hill, but he was our old Ansley, Derek Ansley. Yeah, I think Ronaldo Hill was basically our glorified defensive backs coach, and now he's that in Miami. So I think Ansley is probably going to serve the same role.
Yeah, I mean the Chargers could quite literally bring in Vic Fangio, who taught Brandon Staley everything he knows, and he would be diminished to like a consultant.
Yeah, Staley is very, very stubborn. Again, we talked about it earlier. It's one of his big flaws. One of his big flaws that. Oh, Tyler, I'll ask you this: beyond just this year, so it's not really 2023 Chargers, but still, I'm just curious. So we all kind of have the Chargers being in that middle area around 500. That also means that Staley's going to remain the head coach. Do you have like a huge problem with that?
Well, I do think actually even in the middle area, I do think the Chargers, what Staley needs to do at minimum to keep his job is win a playoff game because I think, the standard's probably up to that point by now. So it really all depends on what they do in postseason success. But, if it comes to the point where Staley, I think the Chargers kind of knew they were hiring a pretty inexperienced head coach when they first hired him. So obviously there was going to be some growing pains. And you saw, the playing all starters week 18 against Denver and not adjusting against Jacksonville. You saw those, mistakes where it's, pretty easily avoidable, but I think if he can just maybe just maybe in the ideal world, like get rid of those incredibly boneheaded mistakes, and just like I don't think he's gonna play a start week 18 again. But like if he can just stop making those giant mistakes, then maybe this could work long term. But like I think right now that's kind of just a TBD.
So you haven't even like completely and I guess he hasn't been so bad you want to completely give up on him, but it seems like a lot of the success of the team hasn't really been Staley being like this great head coach. And it's mainly just been, we have Justin Herbert, so we could have anyone as our head coach and we would still be successful. Yeah. But you haven't completely given up on Staley then? You still think there's a possibility?
Like, it's kind of pretty mixed. I mean, I think the media coverage around him is pretty unfair in some aspects. Like they, for example, like they think of him as this guy who's reckless on fourth down, when last year it was quite the opposite. It was like a complete change in ideal from him. And I think, just like a lot of the discourse around him is kind of lazy, but at the same time, I'm not going to, go defend him like to the death, because at the same time, there are some very valid criticisms of him. So it's not like, where I guess I'm kind of just like at the point where I'm like, okay, I'll look at what you do year 3, and then I'll be like, then I'll see if I'm all the way over in the corner of I want you gone. But right now I'm just kind of like, I'll just taking a wait and see approach.
All right. Yeah. So now, do you want to wrap it up around now? Where do you try and get these two in terms of minutes, right?
Doesn't matter. It just varies, however long it takes.
Consistently, it's around this area. So,
yeah.
Or at least when it pops up on my YouTube feed, it's in
when
this
it pops
area,
up on your YouTube feed. Is that implying you're not watching them?
Well, I'm watching some. I normally play them when I'm working out, actually.
That works. I just need to watch that.
I'm big on podcasts while I work out. I can't really listen to music while I work out.
Yeah, these are essentially podcasts.
I listen to podcasts and like heavy metal.
I would not have taken you as somebody that listens to heavy metal. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, my brother, like in the pandemic, he got one of his old guitars out and started playing it and became a metalhead. And next thing you know, like I'll listen to metal with him, just like when we're at the gym together and such. I mean, but like I can't like sit down and listen to metal like truly.
Sure.
It's just like in the right context is when I can only listen.
Okay, that makes sense then. I was going to say I didn't take you as somebody that was casually listening to metal, but working out makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
But that being said, that about wraps it up. If you guys want to go ahead and plug anything, by all means.
So I'm gonna do the common. I'm gonna do the common No Huddle NFL intro. I'm the owner of the Goal Line podcast, and that is available on Spotify. It's the space goal space line space podcast. And on TikTok and Instagram, I am at No Huddle NFL. Then on Twitter, I'm at No Huddle NFL with an underscore at the end. I'm so pissed about that underscore. And I would tag my threads, but that app is dead. So we're not doing that.
Really?
I got a Twitter, Tyler M. Weiss underscore.
X, not Twitter. Okay. My bad. It's not Twitter anymore. It's official.
God damn it. I didn't want to bring it up.
Elon, man.
I got forcibly switched to the X from the bird today, and it broke me.
Same. Okay, I thought that it always forcibly does it.
All right, so my ex is God, that's so bad to say. It sounds like I'm saying like my ex, like as in an ex partner or something. Like, my ex is Tyler M. Weiss underscore WEISS, and I don't know. I'm planning on some new stuff around, maybe like a podcast or a turn to NFL TikTok. So kind of just like stay tuned for that, But like my Twitter,
Arizona State technology.
Yeah. Not my Twitter. My ex is where you'll hear the news of that. It's so go follow my ex. Oh my!
It's so bad.
Go follow my dude. Okay, I just hope you guys don't follow my ex. Like,
it's so bad.
Yeah. So links to all of that will be in the description. Obviously, all of my links will be in the description as well. My podcast, Run the North. We're an NFC North podcast, but we talk about all sorts of sports. Planning on doing some fun stuff here in the coming weeks. Hopefully, maybe, I don't know. Scheduling's hard. And then obviously you can find me on Twitter. I refuse to call it X. Find me on Twitter at MillerFootball_, on TikTok at MillerFootball_. All the different stuff. It'll be in the link or in the description down below, links to it. And then of course, all the other teams will be covered if they haven't already been covered. I've got a backlog and a playlist that should be linked in the description. And then also you can stay tuned, subscribe for more of these. And then during the season, we're going to be doing a ton of fun stuff, potentially talking about the Chargers, namely Xander Horvath, because we will be pumping out fullback content during the season. But all that being said,
Keith Smith film review now. Demand.
It'll happen at some point. It will, I promise. But all that being said, to everyone out there watching, and of course the two gentlemen joining me here today, I hope you all have a wonderful day, evening, night, afternoon, whatever time of day it is for you. I hope you enjoy it because you're all wonderful people and you deserve it.